I, 35M, come from a well-off family. My parents, both 65, built a successful business from scratch, starting with a small electronics repair shop and growing it into a multi-million-dollar tech company over the past 40 years. I have an older brother, Mark, 38M, who's married to Sarah, 36F. Growing up, Mark and I were close. We shared a room, played sports together, and even started our first small business venture selling handmade crafts at local fairs when we were teenagers. Things began to change when Mark met Sarah in college. At first, Sarah seemed nice enough. She was outgoing, confident, and seemed to make Mark happy. But as time went on, I noticed subtle changes in Mark's behavior. He became more distant, less likely to hang out with me or our old friends. He started canceling plans at the last minute, always with some excuse about Sarah needing him for something. Our family dynamics shifted dramatically after Mark and Sarah's wedding 5 years ago. Sarah always seemed to have a problem with me. She'd make snide remarks about my career choices, relationships, and even my appearance. At first I brushed it off, thinking she was just trying to fit in or maybe she was insecure. But over time, it became clear she was trying to drive a wedge between me and my family. For context, after college, I decided to pursue a career in nonprofit management instead of joining the family business. My parents were supportive, but Sarah often implied that I was letting the family down or that I wasn't ambitious enough. She'd say things like, "I guess not everyone has what it takes to run a real business," or "It must be nice to have such an easy job while Mark works so hard for the family." Mark changed too. He became more aggressive in business meetings, often dismissing my suggestions outright. He started agreeing with everything Sarah said, even when it contradicted his own previously held beliefs. It was like he couldn't think for himself anymore. They'd always visit our parents together, while I often came alone due to my work schedule with various nonprofits across the city. About 2 years ago, our parents decided to start discussing their will and inheritance. They called a family meeting to talk about it. I couldn't attend because I was organizing a major fundraising event for a children's hospital, a commitment I'd made months in advance. I trusted my parents to be fair and fill me in later. That was my first mistake. A few months after the meeting, I found out through a cousin that the inheritance had been divided, with Mark getting 80% of everything, including full control of the family business. I was shocked and hurt. When I confronted my parents, they said Mark had convinced them that I wasn't interested in the family legacy and that I'd probably squander my inheritance on charity cases. I tried to explain my side, but it seemed like my parents had already made up their minds. They kept bringing up incidents from the past, many of which I didn't even remember, or remembered very differently. It was like they had a whole list of my supposed failings. I later found out that Sarah had been feeding them stories about me for years. She'd twist innocent situations into examples of my irresponsibility or lack of family commitment. For instance, when I missed a family dinner because I was volunteering at a local shelter during a crisis, she told everyone I was out partying. When I took a lower-paying job at a struggling nonprofit to help them turn things around, she spun it as me being unable to hold down a real job. The situation got worse when Mark and Sarah moved in with our parents under the guise of helping them manage the business. In reality, they were isolating my parents from me and anyone who might speak up for me. They started screening phone calls, intercepting mail, and even convincing my parents to change their social media passwords for security reasons. I tried to reason with Mark, hoping to appeal to our brotherly bond, but he accused me of being jealous and trying to manipulate our parents. He threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't back down, saying he'd make sure I never saw Mom and Dad again. I was hurt and angry, but I wasn't ready to give up on my family or what I knew was right. I decided to fight back. I started gathering evidence of all the times I'd been there for my family, documentation of my career achievements, and testimonials from friends and colleagues about my character. I compiled financial reports showing how my work had actually saved the family money by providing tax benefits through charitable donations. I also hired a lawyer to look into the legality of the will changes and any potential undue influence. My actions didn't go unnoticed. Mark and Sarah ramped up their campaign against me. They told our extended family that I was trying to steal the inheritance, that I was ungrateful and greedy. They claimed I was only interested in the family when there was money involved. Some relatives sided with them, others stayed neutral, but very few stood up for me. I felt increasingly isolated and betrayed. The situation came to a head last month when our parents announced they were removing me from the will entirely. They said my actions had proven I didn't care about the family, only the money. They accused me of trying to tear the family apart with my baseless accusations against Mark and Sarah. I was devastated. It felt like I'd lost not just my inheritance, but my entire family. I'm now considering taking legal action. My lawyer says I have a strong case for undue influence, given the sudden changes in the will, my parents' isolation, and the drastic shift in their behavior towards me. But I'm torn. I don't want to sue my own parents, but I feel like I've been wronged and manipulated out of my rightful inheritance. More than that, I feel like I've been robbed of my family relationships through years of subtle manipulation. This whole situation has taken a toll on my mental health. I've been struggling with anxiety and depression, finding it hard to focus on my work or maintain relationships. I've started seeing a therapist to help me cope, but it's a daily struggle. I keep second-guessing myself. Am I really the problem? Have I been a bad son without realizing it? Or am I the victim of a long con orchestrated by my sister-in-law and enabled by my brother? I've spent hours poring over family photos and old emails, trying to spot where things went wrong. Part of me wants to walk away from it all, the money, the business, the toxic family dynamics. But another part feels like that would be letting Mark and Sarah win and abandoning the legacy my parents worked so hard to build. So, Reddit Aita for fighting against my brother and sister-in-law to get what I believe is rightfully mine? Should I take legal action, potentially fracturing my family beyond repair, or should I just accept that I've lost my family and move on? Am I blinded by greed or justified in my fight? I'm lost and could really use some outside perspective. Update 1. Thank you all for your support and advice on my original post. Your comments gave me a lot to think about, and I wanted to update you on what's happened since then. After reading your comments, I decided to take a step back from the legal route for now and try one last time to reconnect with my parents without Mark and Sarah's interference. It was a long shot, but I felt I owed it to my relationship with my parents to try. I reached out to my old nanny, Mrs. Thompson, who still keeps in touch with my parents. Mrs. Thompson practically raised Mark and me while our parents were building the business, and she's always had a special place in our family. I explained the situation to her, and she was shocked. She agreed to help me set up a meeting with my parents at her house, away from Mark and Sarah's influence. To my surprise, my parents agreed to meet me. When we met at Mrs. Thompson's cozy little house, I could see they were wary and defensive at first. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes, and my dad's jaw was set in that way it always is when he's bracing for an argument. I started by apologizing for any hurt I might have caused, intentionally or not. Then, I asked them to hear me out, without interruption. I showed them a photo album I'd put together. It was full of pictures and mementos from family events I'd attended, projects I'd helped with, and milestones we'd celebrated together. There were photos of me helping Dad in the garage, baking with Mom, playing with Mark when we were kids. I included cards and letters they'd sent me over the years, praising my achievements and expressing their love. As they flipped through the pages, I could see their expressions changing. They looked confused, then sad. My mom started crying when she saw a picture of us at her 60th birthday party, an event Sarah had told them I'd skipped. I remembered that day clearly. I'd flown in from a conference, barely making it in time for the party, and had to leave early, the next morning. Apparently, Sarah had told them I never showed up. I then shared some of the hurtful things Sarah had said to me over the years, and how Mark had changed since marrying her. I explained how isolated and pushed out I'd felt. I showed them emails and texts I'd sent, trying to arrange family get-togethers that were always mysteriously canceled at the last minute. My parents seemed shocked. They admitted they had no idea things had been so bad between us. My dad, who's usually so stoic, actually teared up when I described how it felt to be told I was being cut out of the will. The conversation was long and emotional. My parents revealed that Mark and Sarah had been feeding them a very different narrative about me for years. They'd been told I was living a reckless lifestyle, neglecting my responsibilities, and bad-mouthing the family to others. Sarah had apparently shown them doctored social media posts and emails painting me in a terrible light. My dad asked why I hadn't defended myself earlier. I explained that I didn't know the extent of what was being said about me, and that whenever I tried to speak up, Mark or Sarah would accuse me of being defensive or trying to shift blame. I also admitted that I'd been afraid, afraid of losing my family completely if I pushed too hard. By the end of our meeting, my parents were apologetic and visibly shaken. They promised to reevaluate everything they'd been told about me. They also agreed to meet with me regularly, without Mark and Sarah present, to rebuild our relationship. However, they're still hesitant to change the will back immediately. They said they need time to process everything and figure out how to handle the situation with Mark and Sarah. I'm disappointed, but I understand their position. They've been manipulated for years, and it's not easy to admit you've been fooled by your own child. At least now they're willing to hear my side of the story. I'm cautiously optimistic about reconnecting with my parents, but I'm worried about how Mark and Sarah will react when they find out about our meeting. I'm also concerned about the family business. Mark has been in charge for a while now, and I'm not sure what state it's in. My parents hinted that there have been some financial irregularities they couldn't quite understand. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my relationship with my parents. We've planned weekly dinners, and I'm going to start helping my dad with some of his hobbies again, like restoring old cars. It feels like a small step, but it's more progress than I've had in years. I've decided to hold off on any legal action, hoping we can resolve this within the family. But I'm keeping that option open, just in case. My lawyer advised me to keep documenting everything, so I'm maintaining a detailed journal of all our interactions. This whole experience has been emotionally draining, but also oddly freeing. For the first time in years, I feel like my parents are really seeing me. There's a long road ahead in rebuilding trust and unraveling years of manipulation, but I'm cautiously hopeful. I'll keep you updated on any new developments. Again, thank you all for your support and advice. It really helped me find the courage to reach out to my parents and fight for my place in the family. Update 2. Hello everyone, I'm back with another update, and things have taken quite a turn since my last post. After my meeting with my parents, they decided to do some investigating of their own. They started paying closer attention to Mark and Sarah's behavior and began fact-checking some of the stories they'd been told about me. They also started looking more closely at the family business finances, something they admitted they should have been doing all along. What they discovered was shocking. Not only had Mark and Sarah been lying about me, but they'd also been manipulating the family business for their own gain. My parents found discrepancies in the financial reports and evidence that Mark had been siphoning money into personal accounts. They found invoices for services never rendered, inflated expense reports, and even a secret bank account in the Cayman Islands. But what really broke their hearts was finding emails between Mark and Sarah discussing their plans to push my parents into early retirement so they could take full control of the company. When confronted, Mark tried to blame it on accounting errors and misunderstandings. He claimed he was just trying to modernize the company's financial structure. But Sarah, perhaps sensing that the game was up, lost her cool. She started yelling at my parents, accusing them of never appreciating everything she and Mark had done for the family. In her anger, she let slip several admissions about their scheming, including how they'd manipulated me out of the will. My parents were devastated. The reality of how they'd been deceived for years came crashing down on them. They immediately called me and asked me to come home. When I arrived, they hugged me and apologized profusely for doubting me. My mom couldn't stop crying, and my dad, who I've rarely seen display much emotion, was visibly shaken. They showed me the evidence they'd gathered and asked for my help in sorting out the mess. I was overwhelmed with emotion. Part of me was relieved and vindicated, but another part was angry and hurt that it had taken so long for the truth to come out. I also felt sad for my parents, seeing how betrayed and heartbroken they were. We spent the next few days going through the business records together. The more we dug, the worse it got. Mark had made several risky investments without consulting anyone, leveraging company assets in ways that put the entire business at risk. The company was in a much worse financial state than my parents had realized, teetering on the brink of insolvency. My parents decided to take drastic action. They fired Mark from the company and informed him and Sarah that they would be revising the will. They also told them to move out of the family home immediately. It was a tense, ugly scene. Sarah screamed and threatened to expose family secrets, though we're not sure what secrets she thinks she has. Mark alternated between angry accusations and pleading for another chance. Mark and Sarah didn't take this well. They threatened to sue for wrongful termination and tried to claim that they had legally binding agreements regarding the inheritance. They accused me of manipulating our parents and turning them against their real son. My parents stood firm, and eventually Mark and Sarah left, but not before Sarah screamed at all of us that we'd regret this. In the aftermath, my parents asked me to step in and help manage the business. I agreed, but I made it clear that I needed some time to assess the situation before making any long-term commitments. My background in nonprofit management is quite different from running a tech company, and I want to make sure I'm making the right decision for everyone involved. We also had a long, honest conversation about our family dynamics. My parents apologized again for being so easily manipulated and for not trusting me. They expressed deep regret for the years we've lost and the pain they've caused me. I forgave them, but also expressed my hurt and disappointment. It was a difficult conversation, with lots of tears and painful admissions on all sides. We agreed to work on our communication and to be more open with each other in the future. We're even considering family therapy to help us navigate this new chapter in our relationships. As for the inheritance, my parents are working with their lawyer to revise the will. They've assured me that everything will be split fairly between Mark and me, despite his actions. They feel it's important to leave the door open for reconciliation, even if it seems unlikely right now. I'm not sure how I feel about this, given everything that's happened, but I understand their perspective as parents. I'm still processing everything that's happened. While I'm relieved that the truth has come out, I'm saddened by the loss of my relationship with my brother. The brother I grew up with, who I shared so many memories with, seems gone, replaced by someone I hardly recognize. I'm also anxious about the state of the family business and the responsibility that's now on my shoulders. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time, focusing on repairing my relationship with my parents and figuring out how to stabilize the business. It's a lot to handle, but for the first time in years, I feel like I have my parents' full support. We're talking more openly than we have in years, and it feels like we're finally on the same team again. I'll update again when there are new developments. Thank you all for your continued support through this difficult time. Your advice and encouragement have been a lifeline during this tumultuous period. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. It's been a few months since my last update, and a lot has changed. I wanted to share the latest developments with you all. Update 3, continued. Hello again, everyone. It's been a few months since my last update, and a lot has changed. I wanted to share the latest developments with you all. First, let's talk about the family business. After diving deep into the finances and operations, I discovered that the situation was even worse than we initially thought. Mark's mismanagement and embezzlement had left the company in a precarious position. We were on the brink of bankruptcy, with several major contracts in jeopardy, and multiple vendors threatening legal action over unpaid invoices. I worked day and night with a team of financial advisors and lawyers to salvage what we could. We had to make some tough decisions, including selling off a few subsidiaries and laying off some staff. It was heartbreaking to let go of people who had been with the company for years, but necessary for the survival of the core business. We also had to renegotiate contracts with our major clients, being transparent about our situation and asking for their patience as we restructured. Through all of this, my parents were incredibly supportive. They admitted that they had been too hands-off in recent years, trusting Mark blindly. They've since become more involved, with my dad coming out of semi-retirement to help rebuild relationships with long-time clients, and my mom taking charge of our community outreach efforts. We're working together to rebuild the company, and it's been both challenging and rewarding to work alongside them. Now, about Mark and Sarah. True to Sarah's threat, they did try to sue us. They claimed wrongful termination, breach of contract, and even tried to argue that my parents weren't of sound mind when they revised the will. It was a messy legal battle that dragged on for months, draining both our financial and emotional resources. During the court proceedings, even more of Mark and Sarah's deceit came to light. We discovered they had been planning to push our parents into early retirement and take full control of the company for years. They had even started the process of transferring some of the company's assets to offshore accounts. We found evidence of them manipulating financial reports to hide their activities and even attempting to bribe some of our employees to stay quiet. Thankfully, with all the evidence we had gathered, the judge ruled in our favor. Mark and Sarah's claims were dismissed, and they were ordered to repay the money they had embezzled. They're now facing potential criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Last we heard, they had moved out of state, with Mark trying to find work under an assumed name. The whole ordeal has been emotionally draining for all of us, especially my parents. They've been seeing a therapist to help them process their feelings of betrayal and guilt. They struggle with how they could have been so blind to what was happening and feel responsible for the employees who were affected by the company's near collapse. I've joined them for a few family therapy sessions, which has been helpful in rebuilding our relationship and establishing healthier communication patterns. As for me, I've decided to stay on at the family business. It's been a steep learning curve, but I'm finding that I enjoy the challenge. My background in finance and nonprofit management has been invaluable in getting the company back on track. I've implemented new financial oversight measures and started an ethics committee to ensure nothing like this can happen again. We're not out of the woods yet, but things are looking up. We've even started to rehire some of the employees we had to let go, which feels incredibly rewarding. The inheritance issue has been resolved. My parents have set up a new will that splits everything equally between Mark and me. However, they've added clauses that protect the business and family assets from any future attempts at manipulation or embezzlement. They've also set up a trust for the employees, ensuring that they'll be taken care of even if something happens to the business in the future. Despite everything, my parents still hold out hope for reconciliation with Mark someday. I'm not sure how I feel about that. The hurt and betrayal run deep, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust him again. But I'm trying to keep an open mind for my parents' sake. We've agreed that if Mark ever does reach out, we'll handle it as a family, with the help of our therapist. On a personal note, this whole experience has taught me a lot about the importance of communication and standing up for oneself. I've become more assertive in my personal relationships, and have even started dating someone who values honesty and open communication as much as I do. She's been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal, and her outside perspective has been invaluable. I've also reconnected with some old friends who reached out after hearing about what happened. It's been healing to rebuild these relationships and to have a support network outside of my immediate family. Looking back at my original post, I can hardly believe how much has changed. While the journey has been difficult, I'm grateful for where it has led me. I have a stronger relationship with my parents, a new appreciation for our family business, and a clearer understanding of my own worth and capabilities. There are still challenges ahead. We're working on rebuilding the company's reputation in the industry, and there are days when the stress feels overwhelming. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm meant to do. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. While this chapter of my life is closing, I'm excited to see what the future holds. If there's one lesson I've learned from all this, it's that integrity and perseverance pay off in the end. It may take time, and the road may be difficult, but the truth has a way of coming to light.